Hello, everyone on Some Expert TV. Welcome to our another session that will be dedicated to controlling costs of Microsoft Azure and the cloud. And we will mention the elephant in the room, the thing that concerns everybody these days as well, spend on AI, which is probably it doesn't even need mentioning because, as some of you may be unaware of, when you purchase stuff like Microsoft Copilot, it very quickly stops being $30 per user per month, because when you really start having fun with it, you go into the consumption area, and that's very much alike to managing Azure costs, which are also consumption-based in its majority. And today with me, I have my colleagues, Daryl Ullman, who's a co-founder and lead negotiator, and Daryl looks after commercial relationships with Microsoft and how you structure your Azure deal to reduce your Azure bill. And Stefan is a more hands-on person. He's the head of the cloud costs department, effectively running the entire Some Expert team of nearly 10 people, if we count them all, who look after various aspects of reducing how much you pay to Microsoft. So this is a very much ad hoc conversation. Let's have an open discussion today, gentlemen. Our audience will forgive us, I'm pretty sure. So yeah, if you want to start with a round of introductions, that'd be great, but don't make them too long, please.
I'll start. I think I know everyone, or everyone knows me. I don't know who's on the call. Been around Microsoft for the better part of 25 years. I'm the deal maker at Sam Expert, and responsible for reducing commercial spend for our customers. Stefan?
Yeah, thank you for handing over. So, been around Microsoft in the Azure world ever since Azure was light blue, white, and light gray, and called managed.windowsazure.net. So, more than 10 years by now. As a solution architect, helped companies migrate their workloads from on-prem into Azure. Along the way, figured out that most of the companies have excellent cloud engineers, so they understand how to build good systems, good landscapes, but too many were surprised by the bill which they received afterwards. They have landed in the cloud, both for the normal stuff in Azure as well as for the licenses, which then happened. That piqued my interest, and for the past years, we have been helping customers, reduce the sticker shock and get into normal billing territory where it was a successful migration rather than something which basically burned the house down.
Right. So, gentlemen, I don't know. We didn't want to start with AI because the subject of this conversation is Azure, but I think it's worth mentioning this, because everywhere I go, everywhere you probably go, we hear the same conversation about now AI is getting out of its kind of baby clothes and nappies, and companies have begun slowly, 1 to 5% of the costs, implementing AI in their estates with the aim of potentially firing all their employees and just relying on robots. Maybe, I don't know. And the question of costs running away is very much very much there. So what can we do about it? And whether you agree with me that it's very much similar to Azure, or maybe it's different. So I'd like to hear both your opinions from the technical and commercial standpoint.
So it is definitely a bit like Azure, and if you're consuming OpenAI services through Azure directly, you will actually see them in your Azure bill, because the Azure ML Studio is built as a regular resource or many resources in your focus data. So you may already be in contact with these. And then, of course, there are the AIs which your company may decide to consume outside of the Microsoft world. Purpose-driven, not every AI is good or equally good at all the different use cases. If you're looking into Gemini, for example, for document understanding, which is, in our experience, more suited for the task than the OpenAI tools are. if you're looking into cloud for coding assistance, if you're looking into all engines which are out there, you are very quickly, even if you selected a single cloud, going into a multi-cloud cost transparency issue, because you now have to pull in information from GCP, you have to pull in information maybe from X. If you're using Grok, you have to pull in information from AWS if you're using their AIs. Even though you are maybe a predominant Microsoft shop, all of a sudden you become multi-cloud because of the way your development teams are selecting the best sources. So a lot of complexity, and it's basically all consumption based. And if you do not have proper naming and proper tooling in place, it can get very complicated and very intransparent very quickly. Yes.
I'll pick up on tooling a little bit later, but Daryl, do you have anything to say on this?
Yeah, I want to just add on to what Stefan has said, and I want to take it again. We're talking about Azure, but at the end of the day, it's everything to do with cloud spend, and cloud spend has been expanded to what I call old school Microsoft 365 licensing as well. So everything to do with the E licenses that now has been expanded, and it's worthwhile dropping the note in this call around E7 a second. That has that was launched a week ago or a couple of weeks ago. I've lost track. Things just move so quickly. And within that E7, as we predicted, if you look back 6 to 12 months ago, we did predict that that's what's going to happen. E7 includes agents and includes AI, Copilot, in other words. So, and there are additional add-ons for agents, and we can talk about that in a minute. But just to give the bigger picture and to add on to what Stefan said, it's a hell of a complicated ecosystem. If we all thought a few years ago, well, I don't know if we all thought, but it was thought that the billing and transparency was going to become easier to track and understand because everything's in the cloud and there's no on-prem, you see, and there's no on-prem licensing, and you don't have to count calls and servers and users and CALs and all the old applications on the desktop and whatever. It's actually, to my opinion, it's never been more complicated and never been more non-transparent than it is today. It's worse than any utility bill that you're paying, like electricity or like your cellular bill. It is just endless. And when you're taking both the pure Azure infrastructure and everything that's going on there, you're adding AI that Sasha just brought up as a subject that's going on within Azure as well. Azure is the infrastructure. It's like it's just everything's under Azure. And then you take 365E, whatever. At the end of the day, that's running somewhere in the cloud, in Azure, with tokens and with agents. Your commercial bill is very, very difficult to control. And if you don't get it under control, it's just money out of the door, and you're just losing a lot of money. I'm just going to say one last sentence, and then I'm going to give it back to you, Sasha. And this is something that I've heard so many times from CIOs, that they keep saying that they can't sign a PO. Each company is different, but they can't sign a PO on average over 30K without going through a full procurement and going through and getting budget and 1, 2, 3, 5 sign-offs just on a 30K PO, or sometimes even lower than that. But any FinOps engineer or any Azure or any cloud engineer basically can sign off on millions for the company. They could put the company at jeopardy of going under the red line from profitability just by hitting a switch or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 and letting it run now for 3 years. Crazy, crazy, crazy stuff. Sasha, back to you.
I'm actually torn whether to discuss the whole subject of set the scene about procurement, but I'll probably do that. I think the biggest problem right now, why we're even discussing this Taming your Azure bill, is that it is a massive shock to the people who've been in the software category in procurement for years and years and years, and the world is changing so rapidly, we see them almost start. You know, when a snake looks at a rabbit and the rabbit is stunned, it can't move. This is what we see, the reaction. I don't want to insult anybody, but this is the psychological reaction that we now see from people who were gatekeepers of the budget, who were responsible for the signing off POs, signing on the budgets for software for so many years, when they knew the quantities, kind of knew the quantities, but could predict them, could predict the growth. It was all either user-based or core-based or server-based, countable, slowly moving. And now they control nothing effectively. Even if you look at the Microsoft standard agreement, yes, you still count user licenses, and I'll mention these 7, but you can still count user licenses, how many you need. You can negotiate that discount. You can negotiate that volume with Microsoft, and that part of the bill is controlled. But Azure or Azure is 50% of an average budget right now in the Western Hemisphere. Not everywhere, but that's the average, 50%. Some more, some less. And that part,
I think it's much more today. I think there are organizations that are at 70% of the overall IT. Microsoft budget is actually Azure and not EAs and user-based.
And what do you control as a procurement person? So unless you step in FinOps and you start controlling that, you're not a gatekeeper anymore. Yes, you may negotiate like a 5% discount on just the cost of the products.
That's it. That's what you control. Your commitment levels. And sometimes actually the commitments which you negotiate, where you may get a bonus on for getting a 25%, 30% rebate from Microsoft, by committing $300 million of spend over the next 3 years for your company in Azure based on some forecasting or whatever else teams are coming up with, can actually create a dynamic that now all this money is going to leave the door, use it or lose it. And now the company actually needs to find good ways to spend all that money on Azure. I think we've also seen cases like this where you are actually, as a procurement person, even sometimes in the position there by listening to your technical people who say, hey, all these growth moments, and then this maybe being a good year, your CFO not objecting heavily, and then something crazy like our current political situation happens, where basically everything is getting more expensive. Nobody, I think, planned for the current increases in cost of oil, the RAM crisis, all these other bits and pieces which may draw down on budget. But you made this commitment to spend $100 million a year for the next 3 years on Azure.
And
even if you cut back on costs, you actually will lose the money.
You can't go back, yeah.
I want to point out something. Sorry, we started to talk about discounts. We touched on this is like an open conversation. So if anyone's got any questions, just drop it in the chat, because we are basically having an open discussion here.
Yeah, we're not AI avatars here. We're live people. Please ask the questions.
Yeah, we're live people. We're still real. Even though I have asked Sasha to get an AI for me and like change me and like substitute me, but it just hasn't happened.
Make you look younger.
Thank you. Well, yeah, that's actually a good point. I'd love that one. Thank you. But what I wanted to point out is that there is something that came up, I think it was last week, when a customer asked me to review an offer for, I've gone blank. It was a certain component. Sorry, I've gone blank. A certain component under Azure. And one of the things that popped out when we were looking at the cost predictions was that they didn't take into consideration, they had a very nice discount, and everybody was like looking at that discount and how well they've done from the previous contract, because they basically took additional commitment on themselves. But there was a small piece missing. Nobody took into consideration what would happen if the baseline price changes, because not like an EA, for example, where your E license or your server license is fixed and your price list is fixed for the duration of the contract, and you know exactly what your costs are going to be. Under anything to do with Azure, the baseline price is not promised. Your discount is. So what happens if that changes? How do you prepare for that? Can you negotiate that? Can't you negotiate that? Do you need to put that into your risk assessment when you take a forward look? So these are things that are, I would say, new. Procurement doesn't always know them. The C-level has no way of knowing it if you don't bring it to their consideration. And then what happens when that baseline price just change? Are you ready for that change? Have you taken that risk into consideration? Do you have budget? I don't know what you think about that, Stefan, for example, on that subject of, and you've seen the Azure prices change and how that impacts our customers.
Yeah. So a multifaceted answer to this one, Daryl. First, I mean, at the moment, what I'm hearing from friends of mine who are freelance sellers in the hardware space, they are telling me about an explosion of costs. Basically, if companies don't sign purchase orders for hardware equipment by the end of the week or by the end of the month, they are getting promised a 2-digit, sometimes 3-digit increase of their order if they are putting this into the next period. On the other hand, if I look at the Azure server costs, they have been pretty constant throughout all this. Now, this in parts is to do that the big data center providers, they already have their delivery contracts locked in. But if you're buying spot capacity, then it basically can be any price next week versus current price today. So there I see, at least with the enterprise agreement, customers a constant price. What you can do if you are scared about price increases throughout your EA term is you can buy a reservation. So these reserved instances actually lock your price. Even if Microsoft would increase their base price, since you already reserved this for 3 years and you already made a commitment to consume this, it doesn't matter if you're paying it all upfront or with monthly installments, you can actually lock in the price for these services. Doesn't help you with new things, doesn't help you if your configuration drifts and you need to then buy new and changed reservations. But if you have like a big stable workload, SAP systems, for example, put these under reservation, you can lock in the current price for the next 3 years.
That's actually a very good. So actually on that, Stefan, what would your recommendation be? Because I know that there are, I don't know, I've heard a lot about the concern of taking a commitment on reserve instances for 3 years. What happens if something changes, if you don't need that reserved instance, that workload changes? Yeah. Are you stuck with it?
Not at the moment. So these reservations, you can see them a little bit like a blanket, which is slightly too small for the bed you are trying to cover with it. So you constantly need to tuck it along as you move your things around. The thing with a reservation, it differs there from the savings plan, and we have already released videos where we go in depth about what a reservation, what the savings plan does. I invite you to watch these or send us your questions, and we can take this up again in one of the future lives. So when you are buying, for example, 1,000 CPUs reservation for a given workload, 5th generation virtual machines is something which I see being in use heavily, but Azure is right now releasing the 7th generation of VMs. So now your IT, after you have reserved these 1,000 5th generation cores, decides to do a cutover and to migrate into the latest generation virtual machines. And say you are midway there, so now you have 500 VMs on version 5 and 500 cores on version 7. You still have the reservation for the 1,000 version 5 cores in place and no reservation for the version 7. So what you need to do is you need to do exchanges of your reservations. And Microsoft at the moment still allows this, but this becomes kind of an ongoing exercise. And this is also something which we do with our clients. We usually review every 2 weeks with them the current IT estate in the cloud and what their reservation estate is. And they basically always adjust the blanket to make it cover 95% of their workload. Something like this is the target we are trying to reach, so that they are paying 5%, maybe 10% on pay-as-you-go cost, and that they have a 95% or higher utilization of the reservations they have. But let it lie for half a year and you are probably having 20% of unused reservations and 20-30% of pay-as-you-go costs again. So this needs constant maintenance. Savings plan, less so, but then savings plans has other drawdowns. You do have the flexibility to exchange this for the time being. Microsoft made a message or made some messaging when they introduced the savings plans 1.5 years ago that they may remove the exchange ability of reservations, but they have put an indefinite moratorium on that. And honestly, as long as they do not introduce something like AWS with a second-hand marketplace where you can sell off your reservations if you no longer need them, I don't see them yanking this one. But you never know. They may decide to yank it tomorrow with 6 months notice, of course.
With their focus now on AI, and I don't know, gents, if you saw the news, I'm actually working on an article for our website. Today there was a massive shift, Game of Thrones inside Microsoft. I think the CEO of LinkedIn is now one of the AI vice presidents. Satya completely is reshuffling everything, and I think their focus is on AI more than on Azure. And I've been hearing these rumors about Microsoft promising to stop reservation exchanges, and they stopped cancellations as far as I'm concerned, but exchanges is still live since 2021, if not earlier. Yeah,
$1,000 a year.
So yeah, it's still there. And I want to repeat something that Stefan, you said in that live we had on the subject of comparing reservations, Azure savings plans and MACC, is that be very vigilant around what discounts you get through what, because Microsoft doesn't automatically apply the highest discount. You can make a mistake when you get better savings through the MACC and decide to go with savings plans and actually undercut your savings. So that's one of the aspects that should not be overlooked. And don't rely on Microsoft doing the right job for you. It's your job entirely.
Yes. And this is also something where I would like to touch on what Harry said about looking at, for example, pricing, exchange rates, and projecting the year total. So looking at your contracted price and your effective price and what the reservation could give you or a savings plan could give you as a price actually is an important exercise, because we had the case where a customer, because they were fully adopting a Microsoft security product for their entire organization, got an outstanding good rebate on Sentinel as part of their 3-year enterprise agreement deal. And that deal was better than the pre-purchase discount. And the pre-purchase works like a reservation, works like a savings plan. Means the moment that they actually purchased the pre-purchasing of the Sentinel thing, they now got the pre-purchase rebate, which was less than their negotiated rebate in the enterprise agreement. And these are a few of the tricky bits, but I would say with the pricing and then rebate policies Microsoft has been running, where you tend to be in the low 2-digit rebates, it is normally a good idea to go with reservations. Savings plan, especially the 1-year ones, you need to look at a little bit more careful. On some resources, this only gives you like 9 or 15% in rebates. App service plans, for example, the rebate is very low on a 1-year savings plan. There it may be a bad idea to go for that. So this is very, very good work to do on a regular basis to check, hey, before we are making a big commitment, would it actually save us? Or are we going to pay more?
I want to switch to tools because obviously there are commercial tools, which is, again, MACC, commitments, discounts on commitments, then savings plans, reservations. But there are just tools that are tools, databases, data, and data processing, and looking at that data in the right direction. I'm going to play a bit of devil advocate here, because we like bashing Microsoft, not because we don't like Microsoft. To be honest, I think they are very forward-looking and technological company, and often winning. But they're not making it easier to manage costs, except for one thing. Microsoft joined the Focus initiative pretty earlier. And they provide the data in a standardized format. And if one thing that probably Stefan's team would commend Microsoft on is the easiness of getting this data these days. I'm not sure, Stefan, how deep, because I'm not one of you geeks, I don't know how deeply Microsoft discloses all those little tiny bits of data and granular services and maybe calls and messages of every single AI call. But I would suspect they probably do, because I looked at it 10 years ago for the first time, even before the Focus standard. And even at that time, it was overwhelming. And that leads me to the whole question of tools. Tools that Microsoft provides, cost management tools, they're not so bad on the surface. And the tools they approve via their partners through the marketplace. But on the other hand, I spoke last week in London in a conference with some cloud practitioners, and one of them said, and everybody agreed, is that the way those tools represent the data, you almost need a tool to interpret the tool. So your valuable data that should lead to quick and efficient spending decisions is either well hidden or misrepresented, or just extremely difficult to process. So what I mean, let's pick up on the tooling, the existing tooling, because there's plenty, but do they work?
Yeah. Okay, so let me put my nerd hat on for a second. Azure, as well as the other clouds, they basically got data for cost reporting very well, nearly out of the gate, because the cloud wanted to invoice you for every meter, rather than when you had, for example, a private cloud deal with a outsourcer, third-party hoster, where you usually had some contract which said, hey, pay me X $100,000 per period for services, and then a few extra bits and pieces which were driven by consumption. In the cloud, you pay for every second that a virtual machine runs, a disk is running, for transactions going through your firewalls, for your network traffic, for everything. So if you have a sizable cloud estate, let's say you're paying $500,000 for it per month, you are probably looking at 500,000 to 1 million lines. And each line in this spreadsheet comes with 60, 70 columns in Azure, nearly 200 columns in AWS. So you're getting drowned in data. If you have good tooling for that, this is actually a blessing, because you now have very, very, very good insight, which also allows you to, more, for example, talk about trends over time. If you're looking at licenses, what I see is a lot of people are working with snapshots. They are looking at their licenses once a year, just before the true-up, for example. And they wouldn't be able to say, hey, what has been our trend throughout the year? Have licenses gone up? Are they going down? Are we right now in a peak, in a trough, on the average? Very, very hard, because you're just taking these single snapshots. Azure and the other clouds, they give you this data every day for all your resources. Now, when you have shared resources, and I see a lot of AI usage actually coming out of a shared resource, because Azure, this is one where I'm familiar with the solution architecture. They actually give you a limit of 30 OpenAI resources per subscription. And if you do not use a lot of different subscriptions, we have customers who only use a few production subscriptions, and they basically have 1 or 2 subs in which they can put production workloads in. You're just limited by this limit which Microsoft imposes on you. So you need to build one AI instance, which multiple applications, multiple services, multiple use cases in your organization are going to use. And then the Azure cost is going to show you the cost for that resource, but it will not divvy apart the cost and say, hey, 30% is coming from my supply chain use case, and the other 70% is coming from my HR use case, to give an example. You can create this data and this visibility by adding log analytics to it, but then you're already in the work of engineering, where you then need to have this consumption going into an additional Azure resource, which you're of course paying. And then you need to write your own tooling, which then takes your, let's say, $100 a day bill on the OpenAI resource, and then splits it to say, hey, $30 go to this use case and $70 go to that use case, and keeps it going as these percentages change and more use cases get onboarded. So you can solve this issue, but as you say, tooling, The one which Microsoft and also the other cloud providers give you out of the box with their cost transparency, cost analysis, cost management tooling, it is, I would say, woefully inadequate to do professional cloud cost management. And so many FinOps practitioners are actually using own tooling. They either build something themselves, they go to paid tools, or they are adopting the few tools which are out there in the open domain. And for the Microsoft Cloud, I would like to call out the Microsoft FinOps Toolkit, which also we are using as the basis and foundation for our own cost optimization work. This is using an MIT licensed package, initially built, delivered, and released by a Microsoft team. And this is giving you a KQL database to basically build all your custom reporting needs on top of data ingestion and cleaning, which is made available to you as a courtesy of Microsoft and Michael Flanagan and Roland Krummenacher, one of our guys. So yeah, you definitely need some tooling assist in order to crunch through this data. Excel doesn't cut it.
Stefan, 2 questions. Quick, I'll fire them, and please, if you can quickly answer to them. Which are the top 3? Spend categories in Azure that you can see on average? I've obviously different clients have different buckets, but on average, where should we concentrate when we start managing costs? Somebody who just decided for some reason to wake up today and start managing costs, where would they be looking?
So I can talk about customers who moved their existing on-prem IT to the cloud. I haven't yet had the pleasure to work with a customer who went completely cloud native and only uses serverless. Then it will be very different. I also haven't worked, for example, with a customer in the streaming business who would be looking at basically network as their dominant cost. The customers I see, they spend their single biggest spend is usually storage, and it is usually the whole thing around disks and snapshots, because a lot is running on premium or sometimes even ultra storage, and a ton of snapshots, sometimes more than 30 days old, where you can ask the question, do you need snapshots which are like 90 days old, or can you just outright delete them to save costs? The next biggest cost I see is compute, and this can be classic virtual machines, it can be Kubernetes, it can be very little nowadays scale sets, because basically you do Kubernetes when you want to do dynamic scaling. I also would count a whole app service plan, SQL managed instances and whatnot in. So basically where you are consuming vCPUs from the cloud, maybe with some service like IIS, Apache, or SQL running on top of that managed for you. And then it's basically everything else. And
everything
the cost can be up to thirds. So a third on storage, a third on compute, and a third on everything else. So I would start, if you wanted to do 2 big things, look at your storage and look at your compute costs. Compute you can attack with reservations and savings plans. You can do some right sizing to make sure the virtual machines and other services only are as big as they need to be. On disks, it's mostly, does it have to be premium storage for everything? Or can you also use lower storage tiers? Or if it has to be premium storage, can you cut over to the version 2 premium storage? Because that like for like is about 20-25% cheaper. So there are definitely opportunities, and I would always go with your biggest spenders, because basically in most Azure services, there are optimization candidates and potential. As with every other cloud, there are very few services where it's basically, you just pay what you use. Nothing to do about it.
You mentioned storage in terms of snapshots and disks and whatnot, but what about the things that Microsoft makes, not necessarily connected with each other, but required pretty expensive storage like Fabric and OneLake for other Microsoft services, which can't use any other storage? They are almost locked into those ones. How much of that you're seeing right now, and whether they are actually a problem, or rather we should be aware at this stage about their existence, but it's not your kind of first line priority?
So you do have the opportunity to also usually work with reservations on this side. For example, if you're using Data Lake, which is one of the storage account ways, and you have a lot of data in there, you can reserve your storage account in increments of 100 terabytes. So it has to be a sizable thing. If you have 30, 40, 50 terabytes in your data lake, there is no point of doing this, but you can work with some of these means. Inside of Fabric, when we are looking, for example, at one lake for the storage, there are fewer ways to reduce your costs there, but Fabric is something that you can, for example, buy a reservation for. So the Fabric which we are using to run our version of the Microsoft FinOps toolkit with our custom layer on top of, we always buy a reservation for 3 years for that. And reason again being, on a small capacity, which is what we would need there, is we can always hand it back with the 50K limit, which Harry rightfully pointed out still is there. So as long as you're not going over $50,000 in remaining reservation value, which you're trying to hand back in a 12 months rolling window, Microsoft just lets you out of the commitment. And it is usually saving you 40 to 60%. So this is, again, where I would look into reservations, into right sizing, and ask the question, hey, do we actually need that? Can we maybe move things into a cheaper tier, which is also something which I am seeing more and more often. Also, log data, log analytics is a very expensive way of buying storage. You can, of course, use ingestion commitments that you say, hey, I'm going to ingest 500 gigabytes per day. Gives you a very good rebate. But the better question you should ask is actually, do we need all this log data? And can we maybe write this onto OneLake/data lake storage where it's cheaper, rather than writing it into the expensive log analytics data space?
Let's complicate this a second. Let's just take a real, well, no, it's going to, for you it's not going to be complicated, but let's just take a real world scenario. We know that Microsoft has discontinued Power BI Premium and pushing all customers to Fabric. Okay,
yeah,
so Microsoft is okay. So then let's take it step by step, just to give our audience an example. They might be aware, they might not be aware. But you're moving from Power BI Premium, so you're basically moving from a license per user to Fabric Azure. Now, when you move, what are the considerations? Is it just Fabric, the cost for Fabric, or do you need to take into consideration database, OneLake, or another solution? How do you even start, facilitating this new cost and controlling it? Because Power BI, you control the license, pretty straightforward. Here, you actually are potentially going to be losing control. So this is like real life happening today as we speak for almost all enterprise customers.
Yeah, and it's not only the per user license cost. There's also a Power BI plan, these P1, P2, etc. plans, which organizations use if they are heavy internal users of Power BI, so that they do not need to furnish every user actually with a Power BI premium license to consume these workloads. And if you're cutting over a P2 Power BI plan into the comparable Fabric capacity, you are about doubling your cost. So the first thing that you need to look into is how much compute power and how much capacity do I need? Can I maybe get a smaller Fabric workspace so that I can at least kind of land in on the same cost?
Can I interject here? Because whilst you've been talking in the previous 10 minutes, I've been thinking, this is all reactive. And FinOps is built as a reactive discipline, effectively. We first build, and then when it breaks, we're going to fix it. This is how it works. I don't see FinOps as being proactive. What you're talking right now, and some of the points you made before, I've been thinking, why is there no emergence of even like drafting, proactive pre-planning, architecting solutions before they rolled out? I'm not talking about months and months of discussions and, like we did in the ITAM world and still do, 6 months of assessing every single potential problem. But things like this, if you are facing a renewal, and Microsoft tells you, by the way, P1 and P2 are discontinued for your renewal. You can't renew them anymore. You have to move to Fabric. And you haven't planned ahead what sort of capacity you require. There is a minimum. You can't go below that minimum. But anyway, if you haven't planned that capacity, if you may even consider reshuffling licenses. You may even consider reshuffling from premiums to normal licenses or to Fabric or to those. Power BI is very complicated. There are so many moving parts. then you can come to that negotiation completely blank, and everything that is said, everything that is presented will be either a shock or just a big unknown you have to agree with because you have no clue what you're looking at. So where is planning in this new cloud world? Why is it not so serious? Why is it not? I'm not seeing it. I mean, maybe you've seen it, Stefan.
Very little. What I still am looking forward to have happen to me is to meet the first cloud solution architect who actually explains to me how the Azure pricing calculator works.
Harry just said in the chat that he considers Azure pricing management as one of the best. Yeah, I could argue.
It's decent depending on what you want to do. For the kind of optimization recommendations work, we, for our cloud optimization team, we can't work with it. But I do see that if you want to do reporting and you can create views inside of the pricing, the cost management, I don't want to say it's a very bad solution. I say it is, for what we are doing with the FinOps team, woefully inadequate, but it serves its purpose. But coming back to your question, which you asked, Sasha, is I see Azure solution architects who design magnificent Azure solutions, highly reliable, failing over between different data center regions, running in West US this week and in East US the next week with a 99.9x% uptime. Magnificent. I wouldn't be able to carry these guys water. I see cloud engineers who ensure this uptime of these systems, who have maintenance windows in the minutes for complex systems operations and upgrades. I wouldn't be able to carry these guys water as well. What I so far haven't seen is any of these people having any clue about cost.
Because they're not managed on it. Because it's their priority is delivering a service that works 99.9% of time for the business and doesn't fail, because that's their goal. The problem is
what's great, there's no budget. In the old days, no, really, I'm absolutely serious. In the old days, a few years ago, you had to order your servers. You had to order the configuration and the architecture of those servers. How many servers do you need? You need failover, you need this. How many SQL servers do you need? Enterprises, Oracle, whatever. So you had to have a cost breakdown. And then, to get to 99.999, and then somebody said, oh, but this is so expensive because there's a PO that needs to be drafted and there's no budget. Can we do 99.989? Okay, and this will reduce the cost. Today, the budget is like, well, we can do everything. And they just do everything because there's a commit for 100 million. I'm just giving a nice round number because a lot of companies are already there. There's 100 million and we need to just consume it. So it's like a sandbox for a kid that all they do the whole day, and it's fantastic. They can build whatever they want, orchestrate, construct, and there's no limit to what they can do. But then at the end of the day, there's a commercial bill that comes through.
The interesting thing is, looking at my own commercial bill, it actually aggregates a whole lot. So the commercial bill which I received tells me that in this period I spend so many €100 on virtual machines, on storage, on network, and it's a single line item. The focus data, on the other hand, is many, 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 many line items. So I see this as a discipline which is often missing in the organization, because you have people who focus on different things. Your solution architects, they design great system landscapes. They make sure they interact well with what is existing, that they are basically delivering new business value. Cost is not their primary concern. The engineers will build a system which is easy to maintain, has few downtimes. If there is something like a patching which needs to happen, it's ideally fully automated. Minimum downtime, so business value is given. Cost is not their primary concern. The one person who actually cares about the cost, like the controller to the CIO, they have absolutely no living chance to work through an Azure bill. If you look at the detailed one with the millions of lines, because Excel will just say, hey, I can only load 1,040,000 lines. Out of cheese, my friend. And then it stops there because people basically shut down, as it is when you're initially faced by this brutally complicated. Making this transparent, making this visible, and also something I would like to give to the FinOps teams for consideration, very important to talk about the achievements which you actually make. So when you are able to insert a good recommendation into this process, and as your cloud costs rise, this is especially important. So you helped make a new solution going in not cost $1,000 a day, but make it cost $800 a day. You basically deliver $200 of value per day. If you're not able to articulate that, a CFO is going to see your ever increasing cloud bill, is going to see that they have an additional cost for a FinOps team, and cloud bills still go up. So what air defense doing? They may actually ask the question of why are we sustaining a FinOps team if our cloud bills just keep going up and up and up?
So let's take the same. I want to just carry that line of thought, Stefan, because we had a query from one of our customers, very similar to that. So we've been driving down their cost for Azure for the last almost 12 months. Okay, and we can see the cost going down for whatever we're touching is going down, and we know where it would have been. But the CEO came back, rightfully so, and he said, guys, they came back. This is like an open conversation, and we were discussing the renewal for another 12 months of the contract, managing their Azure cost. We thought that we were doing a really good job. We actually are doing a really good job. But the CIO, when he looks at the bottom line, he sees his Azure cost increasing. And then he goes and says, why are we paying these guys, SAM expert, whatever we're paying them, but our costs are going up? They should have been driving down our costs. And then this whole conversation starts. Okay, what would have your costs been if you hadn't had SAM expert? Because on the same items that we touched, your cost would have gone up. Instead, it's gone down, and then it's flattened up a certain amount. But because you are introducing new services and you've got your cloud teams really doing a good job because you're migrating more and more on-prem to cloud, and you introducing new AI, and you've got this fantastic AI lab that's running, and these guys are just upping new services every single day without even understanding what the costs are. And we had this conversation, Stefan, I and the customer. Then all of a sudden there was like this peak of a few $1,000 over like a day or two, and nobody could explain it because the AI lab was playing around, and it went up, it went down, it went up, it went down. And it's like 1,000 here, 1,000 there. Next thing you know, it's $100,000 for just playing around in the AI lab without even rolling this out. So how do you explain this to the CIO that his costs are going up, but as you said, he's still paying for a service or for a team or for a tool out there? It's very difficult to get your hands around this complexity and cost management.
Yeah, and Harry has the right answer to this, and this is what we are now doing with our customers. So we are actually walking them initiative by initiative through the savings, and we are saying, hey, we were actually able to reduce your storage cost for backup by X. We were able, by implementing reservations for 95% plus of your workloads, you would have paid that much more for your current workload if there were no reservations in place. So you're basically able to drive down your cost per unit of IT. You just now are consuming more units of IT in Azure, but you are paying less per. And this is a very important one. And we basically fell victim to what I believe a lot of engineers, and I mean, we are engineers and nerds behind the scenes in the FinOps team as well, like to fall victim to. We get into looking at the savings opportunities, driving down the cloud cost, and basically optimizing the hell out of everything. And we miss on communicating it in an understandable language upstairs, providing the necessary communication and presentation material so that the CTO can take it to his CIO, who can then take it to the CFO, because the CEO just got a fit about the cloud cost ever going higher and higher and not being able to invest into, what do I know, a new factory, because now the Azure bill is just eating up his operational budget. This is basically where in the FinOps world, you also have to be a communications expert, and you need to provide transparency, not just for the nerd level, but also for the boss level. And I think many teams are providing excellent work and excellent services on the nerd level, but they don't communicate well to the boss level. And again, we have fallen victim to this ourselves. So it's so easy to do. We were seeing all the great work we were doing, driving 25 initiatives to value realization, talking about, hey, now the cost is going down, everything is great. Never thought about putting this in a slide deck, which could actually be shared around the organization to talk about all the victories. It was an opportunity missed. Absolutely. Please don't do that.
So that's something that, again, it's all about visibility. We can do whatever we can do, and we can do a lot. And it's us, and it's your internal teams that are doing it a better job, worse job. I don't know. Everyone can score themselves. But whatever you do, you need to articulate it in the right language to the decision makers. So you need to make your work transparent. And for that, you need, again, the right dashboards. And you need the right communication skills. And of course, you need to make sure that you're actually doing the work. Because one thing that I keep encountering when I have conversations with customers is the misunderstanding of what FinOps teams do and their responsibility, or what they think they should be doing, and between what I call a cost optimization, cost management team. It's not exactly the same. Well, it's not the same. You might have one company that the teams do both, but then who has responsibility? Do your teams have targets? Have you set out cost savings targets? Have you taken new initiatives, old initiatives, ongoing initiatives, and said, okay, this is an initiative that's been running for 12 months. It's steady state. We're paying $500,000 a year. You have an initiative now, this team, you reduce it down to 400. I couldn't care how you do it, and I want to see it over time reduced. Most companies, I would say 95% or 98% of companies don't even have that thought process. How do we act in a way that we provide cost optimization, cost reduction initiatives, just like procurement has? Procurement, very simple. Having a bad year, procurement's hit with 10% reduction in all contracts. Open all contracts now. Reduce the cost by 10%. I haven't heard that concept with cloud. And why not? There's no reason why not. Actually, not 10%. You could do 30%, most probably. But that whole thought process is not there yet. That's a huge, huge, huge opportunity out there.
I mean, to me, it's sometimes, and I have a family, I've got kids. So no matter what you do, and no matter how well you tidy up the living space before somebody comes to visit, or if there is a party, fast forward 2 weeks, and it's just, let's just say the next time you have to tidy up, there is plenty of work ahead for you. It's a bit the same which I see in a cloud landscape. And this may be due to the whole plethora of resources which you can buy, the unlimited amount of services which you can use. In the example you gave earlier, and I remember from my own times working for a company as an employee in the IT space, hey, running out of server capacity, that was basically things where projects were stopped. You had to wait for the hardware renewal to get more rack space so that you could actually deploy these new applications. Having to buy the new server outside of the renewal cycles of the hardware, this was like, oh boy, there really needed to be a significant new thing for the business. Otherwise, it would just be shut down. In the cloud, you can just build these things, you can test these things, you can leave them alone, and then they clutter. And who of us has time to revisit hundreds of subscriptions with thousands of resource groups, with tens of thousands of resources, and check through them? Do I still need them? Don't I still need them? This is going to be like me reviewing my private family photos with the family. Every photo I'm trying to delete from the 250,000 photos which I have on my home NAS device, somebody is going to object because they find this photo is so nice, this is so cool, this is so fun. I have such fond memories when I see this photo. And I go like, yeah, but you're never going to look at this again in your entire life because it's buried among the other 249,999.
So true, so true.
And it just doesn't happen. And the few people who care enough to actually do this very ugly bit of work after they have been shut down 7 times, I think they just give up and go like, well, it's your money, it's not mine.
Gentlemen, let me wrap this up because we've been for 10 minutes longer than we planned online. And I hope everybody who listened to us, and Harry, thank you so much for your comments. And everybody else could also contribute. Don't be shy. I want to go back to the title of this live event, Taming Your Azure Bill. And I've been thinking that taming is such a nice allegory with a wild animal. So say like a, I don't know, a cheetah. Can you tame a cheetah? I think this is how I feel right now, where we are with AI and cloud costs and introduction of new things, regardless of FinOps being a thing for over 10 years, by the way. Regardless of cloud being a thing for over 30 years, we're still in the area where, yeah, with the proper, looking after and feeding it well, you can sort of domesticate a cheetah. But it's still a wild animal, and yes, it's possible to tame it to an extent, and this is what we do on a daily basis. Daryl, Stefan, and my team as well to some extent. But it's possible. By no means don't be discouraged from doing it, but have very good expectations that it's going to be like Daryl just explained. You reduce cost in some areas, but the overall bill still grows. You just slow down its growth. This is where we are right now. This is the reality, and I don't think it's going away anytime soon. I think I'll retire before anything significant will change in this area.
I want to just add one closing note, just to continue what you just said, Sash, and then I'll let Stefan close off. There's, again, I think there's a misconcept around tools. And it's very similar to the era. And again, maybe we've got a lot of experience between us and we've all seen quite a bit. But it reminds me a lot about when tools started to come out for software asset management. When everybody was installing and doing whatever they wanted with software for all software vendors. And there was a huge amount of piracy out there. And then tools and compliance and everything else. Tools started to come in, and then everybody thought tools were going to be a magic wand. I'm going to install tools, agents everywhere, and I'm going to have full control over everything. I'm going to be able to give my CIO the press of a button, exactly what's installed, where's it installed, what's my current licensing status, and how much this whole thing is costing me. That didn't materialize. Even today, it still hasn't materialized. It's very similar to what's happening with these Azure. We're talking about Azure, but cloud tools. Sorry, there's like this big promise that bring in the tool, really top-notch tools. You're paying a percentage of your spend to the tool, so the tool actually has no interest to reduce your cost because they take a percentage of your actual spend. And then you think that you're going to install these tools and that it's going to start optimizing automatically. And there are tools out there that do some automatic reservations. There's some cool stuff. But it's a big promise. It's exactly like the SAM tool era. It promises a lot, but if you don't have human intervention, okay, you can't get around it. AI is not going to solve your problems. Tooling is not going to solve your problems. And wishful thinking, we're not there yet. You still need people that are looking at the tool and coordinating initiatives and following through that these initiatives are actually being completed. If that doesn't happen, the tools are as good as the people that are using them. And that's my statement. Stefan.
Absolutely. And I couldn't agree more. The tools are just like the tools for a handyman. A handyman will struggle to do a project without the tools. But if you're giving tools to somebody who is not well versed in using them, even the best tool does not deliver good results. I mean, just look at me trying to do Japanese joinery on woodworking. That is not helping. I do like the idea with the wild animal, though in my view, it's a little different. And we are blessed to have the opportunity to work with horses in our family. We actually own 2 horses. And what I do see is that the cloud is very much like a horse, which has a very good potential to be an excellent riding animal and to be a joy and boost to your family. Nevertheless, the amount of frustrations you face with it, the constant discipline which you need to have in order to tell the horse what it is allowed to do and what is not allowed to do, being a 500 kilogram just muscle and bones animal who can basically just kill you, this is where I see the cloud is going a little bit in that respect. So it can be used for incredible good value for you, but you indeed need to tame it. You need to show it what the rules are, and you need to have the ongoing discipline to enforce that. And this is where we can help when your organization is struggling with that, because it's basically what we do all day, every day.
Thank you, Daryl. Thank you, Stefan. And on this optimistic note, by the way, I want to wish everybody a great day and the rest of the week. And if you're not yet subscribed to our channel, so you're not following us, if you want to continue these conversations, we talk a lot about various aspects of controlling Microsoft costs and just controlling IT in the era of AI. Please follow us. We'll be glad to see you again and ask your questions. Thank you very much, everyone. Goodbye.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.